Today's What in the World update comes to us from Gaza. When I say Gaza, I really also mean Washington. There's been some important developments which explain why we don't have a ceasefire at the moment and why we're likely not to see a ceasefire until at least November or maybe next year. So let's get into that. Three main events I want to draw your attention to is one, Netanyahu visits Washington. As you can see behind me, Netanyahu gave a speech to the US Congress in which he said a lot of things which I'm not going to get into, but the significance of that visit was that it followed the assassination of the head of Hamas's political bureau, Ismail Haniyeh, and we're going to talk about why that's important. And then thirdly, we're going to talk about the latest atrocity, Israel bombing a school and killing over 100 civilians. What does that all mean? How do they all fit together to explain the lack of a ceasefire? So Netanyahu visits America simply because he doesn't like Biden, even though Biden's been funding him, giving him whatever he wants. Netanyahu wants Trump to win. Why does Netanyahu want Trump to win? Because Trump is funded by the woman you can see behind me, Miriam Adelson. She's the late widow of Sheldon Adelson, who is a casino magnate who gave Trump tens of millions of dollars in his prior campaign, and Trump actually said was the reason why he moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem in violation of international law, because Jerusalem is Palestinian land. Okay, we got that out of the way. Now, Miriam Adelson is going to fund Trump to apparently up to 100 million because she wants the US to recognize Israeli sovereignty over the West Bank. Why is that important? The West Bank and Gaza are meant to be the areas that will form the future Palestinian state. Remember, the West Bank and Gaza combined is only 22% of the historic Palestinian land. So they're giving away 78% of their land. But the Israelis, especially the right-wing fanatics like Netanyahu and Adelson, you can see behind me, they don't want this. They want all of the land. So she's going to push for Trump and America to do something that's so blatantly illegal, which is recognizing Israeli sovereignty in the West Bank. Now, if they do this, the Palestinians would simply be exterminated because they still live there. How are you going to recognize sovereignty of another country while the indigenous people of the land are still living there? Now, because of that, Netanyahu wants Trump to win. But Biden is pushing for Netanyahu to get a ceasefire because Biden's chances, well, not Biden now, Kamala Harris's chances of being re-elected is being affected by areas where they have large Muslim populations who are opposing what they're doing in funding the Israelis. So you can see areas behind me like Michigan, other areas that have huge Muslim majority populations. They want to see a ceasefire. Netanyahu doesn't want a ceasefire because he wants to wait for Trump, who's gonna not push for a ceasefire and continue to fund him and arm Israel and essentially allow Israel to take over the whole of the West Bank and Gaza. After Netanyahu's visit, he goes back to Israel and Israel assassinates this guy, the guy you can see behind me, Ismail Haniyeh. Why is that important? He was the head of Hamas's political bureau, and that's significant because he was actually one of the leaders in the negotiations for a ceasefire and hostage deal. Why would you assassinate the person that's negotiating with you to stop a ceasefire? Because you don't want a ceasefire. So he, one of the few people in Hamas who actually favors a two-state solution. Most of the people in Hamas are quite militant and essentially they want to see as many of the Israelis killed and removed from their land as possible. He's one of the few people who you consider moderate in the situation as actually calling for a ceasefire. Now, a lot of you that don't know this, Netanyahu said many times that he opposes a two-state solution and essentially wants to see Israeli sovereignty over all the area from the river to the sea. Funny thing, it's not genocidal when Netanyahu says it, but when the Palestinians say it, then it's genocidal. So that's why Israel killed this guy. To top it off, they killed him in Iran, knowing that will provoke a reaction from the Iranians who now want to strike back at Israel. That's why you've been seeing our governments in the US and the UK talking about, oh, we need to protect Israel, we're going to send, US warships and we're going to send soldiers there to defend them. Because of that, that makes a ceasefire much more harder to reach, because essentially what you're continuing to do is inflame your opponent and annoy them so they don't even want to negotiate with you. Just to top that off, Netanyahu then approves the bombing of the school that kills 100 civilians, many of them children, again designed to back Hamas into a corner and make them become more militant. Why does he do that? Because the drag's on the war and essentially November comes around, the US election happens, hopefully Trump wins, and now there's no ceasefire, there's no hostage deal. Israel is now approved to take over all of the area from the river to the sea. Thank you for watching. I hope you found that insightful and informative. Stay tuned for more What in the World updates and feel free to subscribe so you can get the notification when the latest video drops.